about, because you're saying when he came and he wanted to appease them. Well, even before that, he's already observing these practices. And the reason why I say it's significant for the so-called prophet of monotheism, for him to be running around the Kaaba at a time in which there are still 360 idols, is that there's a tradition. Now, I don't believe this tradition is true historically, but it's reported in the Muslim sources. The same Ibn Ishaq reports that the Jews were telling the king of, the Yemeni king, the king of the Yemenites, that this Kaaba supposedly was erected by their father Abraham. Now, I don't believe this episode happened. Be that as it may, it's recorded in this source that Muslims believe contains reliable tradition. Not completely reliable, they'll question some of the traditions. But I want to read the part that's significant in showing that the Jews, if this is a true report, that the Jews were more conscious of the worship of the one God than Muhammad himself. And here's why. I'm just going to read it so you can see why it's so significant that what Muhammad did was a violation of monotheism. Because Muslims keep saying that Islam is the purest form of monotheism and worship should be given to Allah alone. You shouldn't mix it with paganism. But let's see what the Jews told, or supposedly told, the Yemeni king. Let me read this. This comes from The Life of Muhammad, translation of Sirat Rasulullah. And in the English translation, it's pages 8 to 9. It says, they, the rabbis, told that the sole object of the tribe was to destroy him and his army, talking about the tribe in Mecca. We know of no other temple in the land, this is the Jews supposedly saying this, which God has chosen for himself, that's, said they, and if you do what they suggest, you and all your men will perish. The king asked them what he should do when he got there, and they told him to do what the people of Mecca did. Circumambulate the temple, run around the temple, to venerate and honor it, to shave his head, and to behave with all humility until he had left its precincts. Then the king asked, and a very smart question, by the way. The king asked why they didn't do likewise. Okay, the Jews are telling the king, when you get to Mecca, don't destroy it. Run around the Kaaba, you know, honor its customs, because this is a house of God, supposedly. So then the king asked these Jews, okay, then why don't you do it? If you believe this is the house of God, it was erected by your father Abraham, how come you don't go there and honor the customs and run around it? Now notice the response given by the Jews. They replied that it was indeed the temple of their father Abraham, but the idols which the inhabitants had set up around it and the blood which they shed there presented an insuperable obstacle. They are unclean polytheists, they said, or words to that effect. The Jews refused to run around the Kaaba because there were idols still at the Kaaba at this time. And yet I just read a tradition that said Muhammad ran around the Kaaba when there were still 360 idols around it. So how can you say that Muhammad brought the purest form of monotheism when we see that early in his career he had no reticence running around the Kaaba littered with idols? So again, and then maybe Dave, you want to comment on what he was saying, his question.
I wanted to comment on the compromise. Actually, Sam and I aren't too much in disagreement. We're thinking of compromise in two different senses.
That's right.
Sam was thinking of compromise as, hey, I want to make a compromise with these guys to end this dispute between us. I was thinking of compromise just in the sense that Muhammad had a desire, a deep down desire, to win these people over, and that this influenced the revelations that he believed he was receiving from God. Because we know, if we know anything about Muhammad, we know that he was influenced by his desires. When he wanted more than 4 wives, he got a revelation saying he could have more than 4 wives. When he wanted to sleep with his slave girl, and he gave an oath to his wives saying that he wouldn't sleep with his slave girl, he got a revelation from God telling him, go ahead, you can violate this oath to your own wives. When Muhammad wanted the wife of his own adopted son, he got a revelation saying, okay, you can have her. Over and over and over again, Muhammad had a desire, and then this desire would be satisfied by a revelation. And in the next program, we're going to be talking about something that's even more closely related with the satanic verses. The entire, the source of the satanic verses is that Muhammad desired that the pagans of Mecca, specifically the Quraysh, would join his religion, would submit to Islam. And he longed for a revelation from God that would bring these people to Islam. And then he got the revelation that would do this. It was a revelation promoting the gods of the pagans, Allat, Alus, and Manat. So Muhammad desired reconciliation with his people so much that it affected the revelations he was getting. So later on, when Muhammad is praying towards Jerusalem, and this is offending his pagan kinsmen, it's not difficult to see how this person who wants reconciliation with these pagan kinsmen who are offended that he's praying towards Jerusalem would say, oh, actually, no, God has changed the direction of prayer, and now we are to pray facing the Kaaba, just like all you pagans whom I was offending by facing Jerusalem. So it's not that Muhammad sits down and says, all right, what can I do? What can I do here? How can I make things right between us, and how can I make this less difficult for them? It's that Muhammad has a desire for reconciliation with them, and Muhammad's desires, as we know from all the Muslim sources, Muhammad's desires often influence his revelations. And if that offends you, if you think I'm wrong, I would just invite you to trust Aisha. If you don't trust me, surely, if you're at least a Sunni Muslim, you would trust Aisha, the source of so many narrations about Muhammad, who said, after Muhammad received one of these revelations that satisfied his desires, Aisha said, your Lord hastens to satisfy your wishes and desires. Aisha noticed this over a period of years, that every time Muhammad wants something, a revelation comes down saying, oh, of course you can have that, Muhammad. You want the wife of your own adopted son? No problem, you get her. You want more wives than you told everyone else they're allowed to have? No problem, you get them. Anything you want, Muhammad, you get. And when we understand that Muhammad's, according to Aisha, not according to me, according to Aisha, Muhammad's revelations were influenced by his desires. And when we understand that, and we understand that Muhammad had a desire to reconcile with the pagans of Mecca and to bring them into Islam, it's certainly not surprising that he would adopt all the practices of Islam and that these would all get Allah's stamp of approval. After all, Allah put his stamp of approval on all of Muhammad's desires.
All right, I have another question for you guys till we get the phone calls working here. Christianity, we would like to be connected to Abraham. The Judaism, we are the sons of Abraham. And Islam says, yes, also we are the sons of Abraham. And is there any documentary that says that Abraham went to the Arabian Peninsula and this was the place that God told him to build a temple for his son there in that area, the Kabbah area?
No.
Short answer is no.
Not
no
a shred.
Pre-Islamic evidence, no, none whatsoever.
Yeah, and you know, this is something that's very interesting. According to what Muslims believe and what Muslims tell us, you know, there was a line of descendants from Ishmael. You know, it's just like the descendants through Isaac that ultimately became the Jews. And think about this though. The Jews are there. They're in a community. They refuse to compromise with paganism. Whenever they do compromise with paganism, God punishes them until they come back immediately to belief in the one true God. God is always in a clear relationship with the Jews, and ultimately the Messiah comes to the Jews. So there's always a link. They have the genealogies. They can always trace who's related to who goes back to Abraham, and so on. Muslims don't have a shred of evidence, that Muhammad's connected with Ishmael. They don't have any genealogies. They don't have any evidence that they're related to Abraham. They have none of this. So why is that? Why is it that the Jewish community that comes through Isaac kept careful records of everything, was very careful to document their genealogies, knew who was related to who, so that they could trace the lineage of Jesus, they could trace the lineage of all kinds of people, of David, of everyone, and we get to Islam, and you show me a genealogy of Muhammad that goes